Have you ever wondered how to create an informed consent form? There's several aspects to creating a proper informed consent form. So, in today's video, we'll be addressing what you should include in your form, in addition to several best practices to help you along the way. I'm Noel with Jotform. Let's go. Informed consent forms exist to ensure that people know the risks of whatever it may be that they're about to agree to. They're most common in the healthcare industry, specifically healthcare organizations conducting clinical trials, as well as in companies with high-risk services like zipline tours. Although consent forms cannot prevent accidents from happening, they can protect a company when the unexpected happens. So here are some tips to help you create a consent form. You might wonder what elements you should include in your form. Though it is tempting to keep forms short to save space, it's important to remember that your form must include all the elements that you need from the signer, as well as the information you need to convey to them to enable them to sign. Generally, you should collect information like their name, address, date of birth, and medical history if applicable. And, of course, be sure to include a space for a signature. Pro tip, when you use an electronic informed consent form, you can simultaneously grow your email list. An email list allows you to easily communicate with customers and can be used for your next marketing campaign. Now, as you begin to create your form, you should consider all of the information that you'll need to provide to the signer. When appropriate, you should include the following information. State the purpose of the study or research that you're conducting. In the medical field, patients must be informed of the reason for the study or trial. This should include information about treatments with an emphasis on any experimental aspects. Then, you should list the details of the procedure or event. This is where you explain what to expect, duration of the study, and how it will conclude. You'll also want to assure the person signing that their participation is voluntary and that they can opt out at any time. Of course, you'll need to list any risks. The risks should include any unexpected risks to the signer or others. The signer should understand any potential inconveniences or positive outcomes, and include any reimbursements that will be paid to the participant or what financial costs they might need to contribute. This is also where you would mention how they would be compensated if something were to go wrong. Also, you should be sure to mention any regulatory authorities, auditors, or monitors that will have access to the signer's information. And finally, include any additional mandatory information in your forms, depending on your industry and the purpose of your form. Now that you know what information you need to include on your form, let's look at some best practices for creating your form. First, you should create a user-friendly layout. Digital forms free you up to create a more user-friendly experience. For instance, you can break the information up into sections to make it easier to navigate. Next, you can automate your responses. Keep in mind that some fields can be completed automatically, like the date and time. And if the signer has an account on your website, their name and address can populate in the form as well. You'll also want to be sure to use conditional logic. You can set your form to hide or show questions based on previous responses. For instance, if a person answers no to the question asking if they have children, your form would hide the next question about the age of the children. Another thing to include in your form is contextual support or help text. Help text can guide users through the questions, making it easier to complete than a paper form. In your digital form, provide explanations and directions as pop-ups. Our last suggestion is to keep it concise. While you still need to include necessary information, short and sweet is always the best way to go, so don't include more than you need. You should also consider the 4 principles of informed consent. First, the patient must be competent enough to be able to make a free choice, meaning that the patient cannot be intellectually disabled or incapacitated. Second, the patient must grant consent willingly and freely. Third, the consent being consented to must be understood completely. And fourth, the patient must be able to rationally manipulate the given information. It's important to keep the end user in mind when creating your electronic informed consent form. So be sure that the content is clear, contains the necessary elements, and is easy to navigate. Revisit your form from time to time to look for ways to improve it. Let's take a brief moment to review what we covered today. Informed consent forms ensure that signers understand the risks of whatever it may be that they're about to agree to, whether a clinical study or procedure. There are many elements you may need to include in your informed consent form, such as the purpose of your study or research, any potential risks, and any relevant legal information. Don't forget the informed consent form best practices, like creating a user-friendly layout and automating responses wherever possible. And always keep in mind the 4 principles of informed consent as you work to create a useful and effective form. Thanks for watching. I'm Noel with Jotform. We'll see you next time.